Have you ever felt a sudden chill in a warm room or sensed that someone was watching you when you were utterly alone? Across every culture and every century, humans have whispered of things that defy explanation, of spectral figures glimpsed in candlelight, of voices heard where no one stands, of knowledge that arrives unbidden from nowhere. Tonight, in this sleep documentary, we drift through the shadowed corridors of the supernatural and let these sleepy science facts about unexplained phenomena help you fall asleep fast as the mysteries of history gently unfold. Tonight, we explore the supernatural facts that have puzzled humanity for thousands of years. From ancient ghost stories carved into stone tablets to modern encounters that still cannot be explained, this History Sleep documentary offers not answers, but wonder. Here, at the edge of what we know, curiosity meets calm. Welcome to Drowsy Discovery. Over the next 2 hours, over 100 gentle facts will carry you through the strange and unexplained, through the history for sleep that lingers in the spaces between what we see and what we believe. There is nothing to memorize, nothing to remember. Just listen and let your mind wander where logic grows soft. Do you ever wonder why ghost stories appear in every civilization? Why people across the globe, separated by oceans and millennia, have reported the same phenomena? You are not alone. If these soothing facts bring you peace, consider subscribing to join our community of curious sleepers who learn history while you sleep, one sleepy soul at a time. Now let your body settle, let your breath slow. Feel the weight of the day begin to lift, and know that whatever lies beyond the edge of explanation, you are safe here, wrapped in quiet words and gentle curiosity. Let us begin. Every known human culture has believed in some form of supernatural existence. From the frozen tundra of Siberia to the sun-drenched islands of the Pacific, from the dense rainforests of the Amazon to the windswept deserts of the Sahara, every human society ever studied has developed beliefs in forces beyond the visible world. Anthropologists have searched for exceptions, cultures that view reality as purely material and mechanical, yet none have ever been found. Whether expressed through ancestor worship, spirit guides, ghosts, demons, or gods, the conviction that unseen forces shape our lives appears woven into human consciousness itself. This universality suggests something profound. That belief in the supernatural is not merely a cultural accident, but perhaps an essential feature of how our minds make sense of existence. When early humans looked at the stars or witnessed death, they reached for explanations that transcended the ordinary. We are creatures born to wonder. The word supernatural comes from the Latin super, meaning above, and naturalis, meaning nature. The very language we use to describe the unexplained reveals how we think about it, for the term supernatural literally means that which exists above or beyond nature, occupying a realm that ordinary laws cannot reach. This linguistic choice, emerging from medieval Latin scholars attempting to categorize the world, suggests that humans have long intuited a boundary between the everyday and the extraordinary. The word creates a map of reality with two territories, the natural world of stones and rivers and beating hearts, and another world that hovers just beyond, influencing us in ways we cannot quite grasp. When you use this word, you are participating in a tradition of thought that stretches back centuries, one that acknowledges both the power of reason and the persistence of mystery. The supernatural is not simply the unknown, it is the unknowable, where certainty ends and wonder begins. Ancient Mesopotamians recorded ghost stories on clay tablets over 4,000 years ago. In the dusty plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where civilization itself took its first stumbling steps, scribes pressed cuneiform symbols into wet clay to record encounters with the restless dead. These tablets, preserved by the same dry heat that baked them hard, tell of spirits who wandered between worlds, of the dead who return to warn, to punish, or simply to seek the comfort of the living. The Mesopotamians believed that proper burial and regular offerings were essential to keep the dead at peace, for a neglected spirit might return as a malevolent Giddim, causing illness and misfortune. Imagine those ancient scribes, working by lamplight in temples that have long since crumbled to dust, carefully recording encounters that felt as real to them as anything they could touch. The clay has survived, and so has the human fascination with what lies beyond death. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains one of the earliest written accounts of a spirit returning from the dead. In humanity's oldest surviving literary work, the great king Gilgamesh summons the spirit of his beloved friend Enkidu from the underworld, desperate to learn what awaits the dead. The scene is haunting in its simplicity. The ghost rises like a shadow from the earth, and Gilgamesh asks the question every grieving human has wondered: what is it like on the other side? Enkidu's answer is bleak, describing a gray realm where the dead sit in darkness, clothed in feathers like birds, eating dust and clay. This ancient text, composed perhaps 5,000 years ago in the land we now call Iraq, captures the eternal human longing to pierce the veil between life and death. The grief of Gilgamesh feels as fresh today as when it was first sung by firelight in ancient Uruk. Some mysteries remain forever beyond all our progress. Ancient Egyptians believed the soul had multiple parts, each with its own supernatural journey after death. The ancient Egyptians conceived of death not as an ending, but as a complex transformation, during which the various aspects of a person's being separated and embarked on different journeys. The Ka, the Ba, the Ak, the Ren, and the Shute each had distinct roles and destinations, a sophisticated spiritual anatomy that makes modern ideas about souls seem almost simple by comparison. The Ba, depicted as a bird with a human head, could fly between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, visiting the tomb during the day before returning to the underworld at night. The Egyptians spent enormous resources preparing for this afterlife, building tombs and filling chambers with everything the dead might need. Their monuments still stand along the Nile, silent testaments to a belief that death is merely a doorway. The Ka was considered the spiritual double that remained near the tomb, requiring offerings to survive. Among the many aspects of the Egyptian soul, the Ka held a special place, for it was the vital essence that made a person alive, created at the moment of birth and remaining tied to the physical body even after death. The Ka needed sustenance, food and drink left at the tomb to maintain its existence in the afterlife, which is why Egyptian tombs were designed with offering tables and why families made regular pilgrimages to feed their beloved ancestors. If the offerings ceased, the Ka might weaken and fade, or worse, become a hungry ghost that wandered into the world of the living, causing harm. This belief created an ongoing relationship between the living and the dead, a quiet cycle of care and obligation that bound generations together. Even in death, the Egyptians believed, we need those who love us to remember. And from the tombs of Egypt, we turn to the ancient crossroads where spirits were said to linger. Ancient Greeks believed ghosts gathered at crossroads, places where the boundaries between worlds grew thin. In the ancient Greek imagination, crossroads were places of power and danger, liminal spaces where three or more paths met, and where the barrier between the living and the dead became permeable. Travelers approaching a crossroads at night might encounter the shades of the dead, spirits who clustered at these junction points waiting for offerings or drawn to the energy of transition. The Greeks performed rituals to appease these wandering souls, leaving food, pouring libations, and speaking prayers into the darkness. This belief reflects a deeper understanding of boundaries and thresholds, the intuition that places of transition are charged with supernatural potential. Even today, crossroads appear in folklore worldwide as places where bargains can be struck with otherworldly powers. The moment of choosing a path has always felt touched by forces beyond the ordinary. Hecate, goddess of magic and ghosts, was worshipped at crossroads with offerings left at midnight. Hecate was a goddess of contradictions, associated with the moon and the night, with magic and witchcraft, with the boundaries between life and death. Her worshippers left offerings called Hecate's suppers at crossroads on the dark of the moon, plates of food that would be consumed by the poor or by stray dogs, her sacred animals. She was depicted holding torches, illuminating the darkness, and accompanied by a pack of ghostly hounds whose howling announced her approach. Unlike the bright Olympian gods who ruled from mountaintops, Hecate dwelt in the shadows, a protector of those who walked between worlds, whether witches, travelers, or the restless souls of the recently dead. To honor Hecate was to acknowledge that some truths can only be found in darkness. She is still invoked today by those who practice modern witchcraft. The Romans held the Lemuria festival each May to appease restless spirits of the dead. For 3 nights in May, the practical, law-giving Romans turned their attention to the supernatural, performing elaborate rituals to drive away the Lemures, the restless and potentially malevolent ghosts of the dead. The head of each household would rise at midnight, walk barefoot through the house, and throw black beans over his shoulder, while chanting 9 times that the beans were offerings to redeem his family from the watching spirits. The ritual required never looking back, for to see a ghost directly was to invite great disaster upon the household. This strange festival reveals a side of Roman culture often overlooked. Beneath the marble temples and military discipline lay the same ancient fears that haunt all human societies. Even the mightiest empire ever built acknowledged that some powers cannot be conquered by legions or laws. Roman homes often had shrines to the Lares, protective household spirits believed to guard the family. Every Roman home, from the humblest apartment to the grandest villa, contained a small shrine called a lararium, where the family honored their Lares, the protective spirits who watched over the household. These spirits were believed to be the deified ancestors of the family, transformed after death into benevolent guardians who ensured prosperity and safety for their descendants. Offerings of food and wine were made daily, small portions set aside before meals, and on special occasions the shrine would be decorated with garlands. This practice created an intimate daily connection between the living and the dead, a sense that the family extended beyond the visible members sitting at table to include generations stretching back into the mists of time. In honoring the Lares, the Romans acknowledged that death does not sever the bonds of love. Pliny the Younger wrote one of the first detailed ghost stories in Western literature around 100 AD. The Roman author Pliny the Younger, best known for his eyewitness account of the eruption of Vesuvius, also left us one of the most vivid ghost stories from the ancient world. In a letter to a friend, he described a haunted house in Athens that no one would rent because of the terrifying sounds that echoed through its rooms at night, chains rattling, groans rising from empty corridors. The story has all the elements we recognize from modern ghost tales: the skeptical newcomer, the midnight manifestation, the restless spirit seeking peace. What strikes us across the centuries is how familiar it feels, as though the template for ghost stories was set nearly 2,000 years ago and has barely changed since. Pliny wrote this account as though presenting evidence, carefully laying out the facts for his correspondent to judge. The dead, it seems, have always demanded to be heard. His account described a philosopher who encountered a chain-rattling specter in a haunted house in Athens. In Pliny's tale, a philosopher named Athenodorus rented the haunted house at a suspiciously low price, curious to investigate the rumors himself. That first night, as he sat reading by lamplight, he heard the sound of chains dragging across the floor, growing closer and closer. When he looked up, he saw the ghost of an old man, emaciated and filthy, bound in chains and beckoning him to follow. Rather than fleeing in terror, Athenodorus calmly followed the spirit into the courtyard, where it vanished into the earth. The next day he had the spot excavated, and there, buried beneath the stones, lay a skeleton wrapped in rusted chains. Once the bones were properly buried with appropriate rites, the haunting ceased forever. This story established a pattern that persists to this day, that ghosts return because something was left undone, and peace comes only when the wrong is set right. And from the haunted houses of antiquity, we move to the medieval world where spirits walked among the living. Medieval Europeans believed the dead could return as revenants, corporeal beings seeking unfinished business. Unlike the ethereal ghosts of later imagination, medieval revenants were believed to return in their actual physical bodies, climbing out of their graves to walk among the living. Chronicles from the period describe encounters with these corporeal dead, beings that could knock on doors, speak to the living, and even physically harm those who crossed them. The word revenant comes from the Latin meaning one who returns, and these beings were feared precisely because they were not mere shadows but solid presences. Stories tell of revenants returning to settle debts, to punish those who wronged them, or simply because they had died with sins unconfessed. Communities developed elaborate precautions, weighing down graves with stones, binding bodies with rope, even decapitating the dead to ensure they could not rise. The boundary between life and death felt thin in those centuries. The Church taught that ghosts were souls trapped in purgatory, awaiting prayers to release them. Medieval Christianity incorporated ghost beliefs into its theology by explaining that the spirits who returned were souls suffering in purgatory, that intermediate realm where sins were purged before entry into heaven. These ghosts were not demonic or evil but suffering, and their appearances were interpreted as desperate pleas for the prayers of the living to shorten their torment. Families would pay for masses to be said for their departed loved ones, believing that each prayer brought the soul closer to release. This created a relationship of mutual obligation between the living and the dead, where the departed depended on the living for salvation, and the living gained spiritual merit through their intercession. The ghost at the bedside was not a horror but a beloved relative, asking for help from beyond the grave. Even in death, the bonds of family and faith endured. Candles placed around the dying were believed to guide the departing soul and ward off evil spirits. As death approached in medieval Europe, the rituals began, designed to ease the soul's passage and protect it from the demons that were believed to hover at the deathbed, eager to snatch the newly departed. Candles were lit and placed around the dying person, their flames both illuminating the way to the afterlife and creating a barrier of sacred light against malevolent forces. The family would gather to pray, their voices forming a protective chorus, while priests administered last rites to ensure the soul departed in a state of grace. These rituals transformed death from a solitary terror into a communal passage, with the dying person surrounded by love and light. The flickering candles cast long shadows on medieval walls, marking the moment when one world gave way to another. Light has always been our answer to darkness. And as you rest with these thoughts of ancient beliefs, there is no need to hold onto any of them. Let them pass through you like candlelight flickering against old stone walls. Take a breath if you wish, and let your body settle a little deeper into this history for sleep. Church bells were rung during funerals to frighten away demons that might snatch the departing soul. The deep resonance of church bells served a supernatural purpose far beyond simply announcing the time or calling the faithful to worship. When someone died, the bells would toll in a specific pattern, their vibrations believed to cleave through the air and drive away the demons that lurked at the edges of this world, waiting for souls to steal. The sound was thought to create a path of sanctified air through which the soul could safely travel, protected by the sacred bronze that had been blessed and consecrated. Different patterns of tolling indicated age, gender, and social standing, allowing the community to know who had passed even before the news spread by word of mouth. The bells were the voice of the church itself, speaking to both the living and the dead, to the earthly realm and the spiritual one. Their echo faded into silence, but the soul, it was believed, continued on. The Wild Hunt was a European legend of ghostly riders crossing the night sky, foretelling doom. On stormy nights across medieval Europe, people huddled indoors, ears straining against the howling wind for the sound they dreaded most, the thundering of hooves and baying of hounds that announced the Wild Hunt was riding. This spectral procession of ghostly hunters, sometimes led by legendary figures, sometimes by the recently dead, was believed to sweep across the sky, gathering souls and foretelling disaster for any who witnessed it. Those caught outdoors when the hunt passed might be snatched up and carried away, or driven mad by what they had seen. The legend appears in virtually every corner of Europe, from Scandinavia to the British Isles, always with the same core elements of phantom riders and terrible consequence. Perhaps it was simply a way of explaining wild winter storms. The wind still howls on dark winter nights. In Norse mythology, the Wild Hunt was led by Odin himself, gathering souls of the dead. In the Germanic and Scandinavian versions of the legend, the Wild Hunt was led by none other than Odin, the All-Father, riding his 8-legged horse Sleipnir across the cold winter sky. To the Norse, this was not merely a terrifying phenomenon, but a divine mystery, for Odin was the god of death as much as he was god of wisdom and war. The souls he gathered were not stolen, but claimed brave warriors who had died valiantly and were being carried to Valhalla to feast and fight until the end of days. Farmers would leave offerings for the hunt as it passed, hoping to win the gods' favor and protection for the coming year. The sound of the wind through the bare branches, the howling of wolves in the far distance, all could be interpreted as signs of Odin's passing. To the Old Norse, the dark winter night was alive with gods and spirits. And from the stormy skies of northern legends, we descend to the quiet rituals that sought to keep the dead at rest. Coins were placed on the eyes of the dead to pay the ferrymen who carried souls across the river Styx. The ancient Greeks believed that death was a journey, and like any journey, it required payment. Charon, the ferryman of the dead, waited at the banks of the river Styx to carry souls across to the underworld, but he would not transport those who could not pay his fee. And so the living placed coins on the eyes or in the mouths of their dead, ensuring that their loved ones would not be stranded on the wrong side of that dark river for eternity. Those without payment were said to wander the shores for 100 years, homeless ghosts caught between worlds. This practice persisted for centuries across the Mediterranean world, and coins have been found in ancient graves throughout Europe. The image is haunting, a lonely spirit standing on a dark riverbank, watching the ferry depart without them. We still close the eyes of our dead, though the reason has long been forgotten. In many cultures, mirrors were covered after a death to prevent the soul from becoming trapped in the reflection. Across cultures and centuries, mirrors have been associated with the supernatural, seen as portals between worlds or as traps for wandering spirits. When death visited a household, one of the first acts was often to cover every mirror with cloth, for it was believed that the newly departed soul, confused and disoriented, might see its reflection and become trapped within the glass forever. Others believed that mirrors could capture the soul of anyone who looked into them while death was present, or that the spirit of the deceased might be seen looking over the shoulders of the mourners. This practice was common in Victorian England, in Jewish tradition, and in cultures as far apart as China and Mexico. There is something unsettling about our own reflection, that familiar yet somehow separate version of ourselves. In death, that unease becomes something more. Clocks were stopped at the moment of death in Victorian England to mark the exact passing of the soul. When death came to a Victorian household, one of the first acts was to stop every clock at the precise moment the person passed, their hands frozen as a permanent record of that final instant. This ritual served multiple purposes. It marked the exact time for legal matters, but more importantly, it acknowledged the rupture that death brought to the normal flow of time. The stopped clock became a symbol of a world interrupted, a household where ordinary rhythms had been shattered. Some believed the clocks were stopped to prevent bad luck, others that time itself held dangers for the departing soul. The clocks would remain silent throughout mourning, a visible reminder that something fundamental had changed. Even after mourning ended and life resumed, the moment of death was never forgotten. Time flows differently in the presence of loss. The Victorians developed an elaborate culture of mourning, including jewelry made from the hair of the deceased. Victorian mourning was a highly codified ritual, with specific rules governing dress, behavior, and duration depending on the relationship to the deceased. Among the most intimate of mourning customs was the creation of jewelry woven from the hair of the dead, braided into intricate patterns and set into brooches, lockets, and rings. Far from being macabre, this practice was seen as deeply loving, a way of keeping a physical piece of the departed close to your heart. Hair does not decay, making it a perfect symbol of the enduring bond between the living and the dead. Entire industries grew around mourning, with strict rules about when black crepe could give way to purple. This elaborate ritual acknowledged death as a central fact of life, something to be faced rather than hidden. We have lost much of this language for grief. Spirit photography emerged in the 1860s, claiming to capture images of ghosts alongside the living. The new technology of photography seemed almost magical to the Victorians, capturing light and shadow in ways that felt uncanny, and it was perhaps inevitable that someone would claim cameras could see what human eyes could not. Spirit photography promised visible proof of the afterlife, images showing faint forms of deceased relatives hovering beside the living. To a society reeling from war casualties and high infant mortality, these photographs offered comfort that transcended religious faith. Grieving parents could see their lost children once more. Widows could gaze at husbands killed in battle. The photographs were technically simple to fake using double exposures, but the desire to believe was overwhelming. For many, these ghostly images were evidence that death was not the end. The dead, it seemed, were waiting beyond. William Mumler became famous for his supposed ghost photographs, though many were later exposed as frauds. William Mumler was a Boston jeweler who accidentally created what appeared to be a ghost photograph in 1861, and soon found himself at the center of a phenomenon that swept across America. His clients included Mary Todd Lincoln, who sat for a portrait in which the ghostly hands of her assassinated husband appeared to rest on her shoulders. Mumler charged high prices for his services, and his fame spread across 2 continents. But investigators began to identify the supposed ghosts as living people whose likenesses Mumler had photographed earlier, and he was eventually put on trial for fraud. Though acquitted for lack of evidence, his reputation never recovered. Yet even after his exposure, many continued to believe, choosing the comfort of their faith over the evidence of deception. The desire to see our dead once more can be stronger than any proof. And from the Victorian parlors of spirit photography, we turn to the seance rooms where the dead were summoned to speak. Spiritualism began in 1848 when the Fox sisters claimed to communicate with spirits through rapping sounds. In a small farmhouse in Hydesville, New York, two young sisters named Kate and Margaret Fox began claiming that mysterious rapping sounds in their home were messages from the spirit world. They developed a code, with spirits supposedly answering yes or no questions through knocks. News spread rapidly, and within months they were giving public demonstrations to packed halls. What began as possible childish mischief sparked a religious movement that would attract millions across the Western world. Decades later, one sister confessed they had produced the sounds by cracking their toe joints, though she later recanted the confession. The origins were humble and perhaps fraudulent, yet the movement they started changed how millions thought about death. Some deceptions answer needs too deep to be undone by truth. Within years, spiritualism had millions of followers across America and Europe seeking contact with the dead. Spiritualism spread with remarkable speed, finding fertile ground among people who had lost loved ones and longed to know they still existed somewhere. By the 1850s, there were over 2 million spiritualists in America alone, with countless more in Britain and continental Europe. The movement attracted people from all walks of life, from grieving farmers to eminent scientists, from factory workers to royalty. Queen Victoria herself was rumored to have attempted to contact her beloved Prince Albert through mediums after his untimely death. Spiritualism offered something traditional religions often did not: direct communication with specific deceased individuals. Churches were established, and conventions held where believers could share their experiences. It was a new religion born from grief and loss. Seances became fashionable gatherings where mediums claimed to channel messages from departed loved ones. In darkened parlors across Europe and America, groups would gather around tables to participate in seances, ceremonies in which a medium served as a bridge between the living and the dead. Participants would join hands, the lights would then dim, and the medium would enter a trance state, speaking with voices not their own as spirits allegedly took control. Messages from the dead would flow, sometimes in recognizable voices, sometimes through automatic writing, sometimes through mysterious rappings on the walls. These gatherings became fashionable among the upper classes, mixing genuine grief with social occasion. The seance room was a liminal space where the rules of ordinary reality seemed suspended. Some left convinced they had heard from their beloved departed. The truth often mattered less than the experience. Table tipping became a popular phenomenon, with tables supposedly moving on their own during seances. Among the most dramatic phenomena reported in seance rooms was table tipping, in which heavy wooden tables would rock, tilt, and sometimes seem to levitate under the touch of participants' fingertips. Sitters would place their hands lightly on the table surface, and after concentration, the table would begin to move, tapping out messages or pointing toward people in the room. Skeptics demonstrated that the movements could be explained by unconscious muscular actions, called the ideomotor effect, where expectation causes movements without conscious awareness. Yet believers had felt the table move under their hands, experienced something that seemed beyond ordinary explanation. The question of whether movement came from spirits or from the depths of the human mind remains contested. Perhaps both possibilities are equally mysterious. Harry Houdini spent years exposing fraudulent mediums, yet remained fascinated by the possibility of an afterlife. The great escape artist Harry Houdini dedicated his later years to investigating and exposing fraudulent mediums, attending seances in disguise, and revealing the tricks they used to deceive the grieving clients. His knowledge of stage magic made him uniquely qualified to spot the hidden wires, trap doors, and sleight of hand that created seemingly supernatural effects. Yet Houdini's crusade was motivated not by disbelief, but by hope. He desperately wanted to find a genuine medium who could connect him with his beloved late mother. His rage at frauds came from a place of grief, anger at those who exploited the bereaved for profit. He never found the genuine article he sought, yet never stopped looking. The man who could escape from any lock could not escape his longing for one more conversation with the dead. He arranged a secret code with his wife so that if spirits were real, he could prove contact after death. Before his death in 1926, Houdini arranged a secret message with his wife Bess, a code known only to them that would prove any communication was genuinely from beyond. For 10 years after his death, Bess held annual seances on Halloween, the anniversary of his passing, waiting for the code that never came. Medium after medium claimed to have contacted Houdini's spirit, but none could produce the secret phrase. Finally, in 1936, Bess extinguished a candle beside Houdini's photograph and declared that 10 years was long enough to wait. The final seance received worldwide attention, a moment of closure that was also a moment of loss. Yet even today, on Halloween night, Houdini enthusiasts gather to attempt contact, hoping the master escapist might yet find a way to escape from death itself. The candle flickers, but the code remains unspoken. And from the world of mediums and magic, we travel to the ancient lands of the Far East, where spirits have always walked. In Chinese tradition, the Hungry Ghost Festival honors spirits who wander the earth seeking sustenance and peace. During the 7th month of the lunar calendar, the gates of the underworld are believed to open wide, allowing the spirits of the deceased to roam freely across the earth in search of food and entertainment. Families set out elaborate offerings of food and drink, burn incense, and light lanterns to guide the wandering spirits home. The festival acknowledges those who have no one to remember them, the lonely souls who might otherwise cause mischief or misfortune. Opera performances are staged with empty seats in the front row, reserved for ghostly audiences. It is a time when the boundary between worlds grows thin, and the living must be careful not to offend the restless dead. The festival reminds us that we have obligations to those who came before, and that death does not end the relationship between generations. During the festival, paper money and offerings are burned to provide for ancestors in the afterlife. The practice of burning joss paper, mock money, and paper models of houses, cars, and servants ensures that the deceased have everything they could possibly need in the spirit world. This special paper currency is called hell money or spirit money, printed with astronomical denominations so that ancestors can live in perfect comfort beyond the grave. The flames transform material offerings into something that spirits can receive, the smoke carrying gifts across the boundary between the living and dead worlds. Families may burn paper smartphones, designer clothes, or even paper mansions complete with all furniture to keep deceased relatives happy and prosperous. The logic is beautiful in its simplicity. Love transcends death, and we can still provide for those we have lost. What burns here appears whole in the realm beyond. Japanese folklore is filled with yurei, spirits of the dead who cannot find peace due to strong emotions. Yurei are distinct from other supernatural beings in Japanese culture. They are specifically the souls of the dead who have been prevented from peaceful passage to the afterlife by powerful emotions like love, jealousy, or deep hatred. They appear most often at night, in a particular visual style: white burial kimono, limp hands, and long, disheveled black hair covering their faces. Unlike Western ghosts who typically haunt specific locations, yurei are bound to specific people, pursuing those who wronged them until justice is served or the spirit is properly pacified. Traditional theater and later cinema embraced these figures, making them central to Japanese horror. The yurei represents the consequences of unresolved conflict, the price paid when the dying are not granted peace. Even in death, deep emotions bind us. The onryo is a vengeful spirit in Japanese tradition, often depicted with long black hair and white funeral robes. The onryo is perhaps the most feared type of yurei, a spirit driven by such powerful rage or jealousy that it can cause physical harm to the living, bringing disease, death, or terrible natural disasters upon those who wronged it. Famous onryo from Japanese legend include Oiwa, a woman poisoned by her unfaithful husband, whose disfigured face became an iconic and truly terrifying image of supernatural vengeance. These spirits cannot be stopped by physical means. Only by addressing the original wrong through ritual, sincere apology, or proper burial can they be pacified. The concept influenced modern horror films worldwide, from Ringu to The Grudge. The onryo embodies a profound truth that wrongs we commit do not end with the death of our victims. Some debts cannot be escaped, and some anger outlasts the flesh. In Shinto belief, kami are spirits that inhabit all things, from rivers to rocks to ancient trees. In the Shinto worldview, the sacred is not separate from the natural world but woven throughout it, present in every aspect of existence. Kami inhabit mountains, waterfalls, unusual rocks, ancient trees, and countless other features of the natural landscape. They are not gods in the Western sense, but rather spiritual essences deserving of respect and proper ritual attention. Shrines mark places where kami presence is particularly strong, and offerings are made regularly to maintain harmony between the human and spirit worlds. Even departed ancestors can become kami, watching over their living descendants with loving care. This understanding creates a world alive with sacred presence, where every stream and stone might house something deserving of reverence. The ordinary world, when seen rightly, is already fully enchanted. Korean shamans, known as mudeng, have served as intermediaries between the living and the spirit world for millennia. The mudeng tradition stretches back many thousands of years in Korean culture, with shamans, predominantly women, performing elaborate sacred rituals called gut to communicate with spirits and ancestors on behalf of their communities. During these ceremonies, the mudeng enters a trance state, becoming a vessel through which spirits speak directly to the living. They diagnose spiritual causes of illness, guide the dead to the afterlife, and petition spirits on behalf of those seeking good fortune. Despite centuries of suppression by Confucian authorities and modern governments, the practice has survived and experienced revival as cultural heritage. The mudeng carries ancient knowledge, serving as a living bridge between visible and invisible realms. Some connections are simply too important to be forgotten. The Hindu concept of Buddha refers to restless spirits of those who died violently or before their time. Buddha are believed to be the souls of those who died with unfulfilled desires, victims of violence, suicide, or tragic accidents, or those who did not receive proper funeral rites. Unlike souls that pass smoothly to the next life or rebirth, Buddha linger at the threshold between worlds, sometimes causing illness or misfortune to the living who cross their paths. They are often associated with specific locations, particularly crossroads, cremation grounds, and ancient banyan trees where they are believed to gather. Rituals exist to appease these spirits and help them move on, acknowledging their suffering and addressing their unfinished business. The concept reflects a belief that how we die matters, that a peaceful death with proper rites leads to a peaceful afterlife. The manner of our ending echoes beyond the grave. In Tibetan Buddhism, the bardo is the intermediate state between death and rebirth, where the soul encounters visions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes in extraordinary detail what the consciousness experiences between death and rebirth, a journey lasting 49 days through strange and dreamlike realms. The deceased encounters a dazzling array of peaceful and wrathful deities, all of which are understood to be projections of the mind itself. If the dying person recognizes these visions as aspects of their own consciousness, they can achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth. If not, they are drawn toward a new incarnation determined by their karma. Monks traditionally read the text aloud to dying and recently deceased persons, serving as guides through this perilous journey. The bardo is a second chance, a final opportunity for awakening between one life and the next. Even in death, awareness remains precious. And from the spiritual traditions of Asia, we journey to the lands where poltergeists first gained their fearsome name. The word poltergeist comes from German, meaning noisy ghost, and describes spirits that cause physical disturbances. Unlike traditional ghosts that appear visually, poltergeists manifest primarily through physical effects: objects flying through the air, furniture moving on its own, mysterious knockings and rappings, sometimes even physical attacks on people. The phenomena often center around a particular person, frequently an adolescent, leading some researchers to theorize that poltergeist activity might be caused by unconscious psychokinetic energy rather than spirits of the dead. Cases have been reported across cultures and history, with remarkably consistent features despite the witnesses having no knowledge of other cases. Whether the explanation lies in spirits, psychic powers, or hoaxes, something real seems to be happening. The poltergeist remains one of the most unsettling phenomena in supernatural lore, evidence that invisible forces can touch the physical world. One of the earliest recorded poltergeist cases occurred in Germany in 858 AD. A farmhouse near Bingen on the Rhine experienced terrifying disturbances, with stones thrown at the building, fires starting spontaneously, and a disembodied voice that spoke to witnesses and made accusations against certain villagers. The local priest was called to investigate an attempted exorcism, but the phenomena continued unabated for some time. This case was documented by the historian and Archbishop Hincmar of Reims in his Annals, giving it unusual credibility for such an early account. The pattern of disturbances matches modern poltergeist cases with remarkable precision, suggesting either a genuine phenomenon that has persisted across centuries or a tendency of the human mind to fabricate similar stories. Either explanation is fascinating. Some mysteries have haunted humanity since the earliest records were kept. And as you drift through these stories of noisy spirits and unexplained sounds, let your own surroundings grow still. There is only the quiet rhythm of your breath now, only the gentle weight of rest settling over you. These are facts to fall asleep to, carrying you deeper into the calm. The drummer of Tedworth in 1661 was one of England's most famous early poltergeist cases. A magistrate named John Mompesson confiscated the drum of a vagrant beggar, and soon afterward his house was plagued by violent and unexplainable disturbances. Drumming sounds echoed through the house at all hours, objects flew through the air, and the children were lifted in their beds by unseen forces. The case attracted curious visitors from across England, including members of the Royal Society, who came to investigate the strange phenomena. Some suspected the beggar had cursed the magistrate's household, others that demons had taken residence. The phenomena continued for years before gradually fading. The drummer of Tedworth became a landmark case, one of the first to be investigated by educated observers attempting to apply rational inquiry to supernatural claims. Some hauntings, it seems, refused to yield their secrets. The Enfield poltergeist case of 1977 involved furniture moving and voices emerging from a young girl. For nearly 2 years, a council house in North London was the site of terrifying disturbances that made international headlines. Janet Hodgson, aged 11, seemed to be at the center of the activity, with furniture sliding across floors, objects flying, and most disturbingly, a deep male voice emerging from her body claiming to be a deceased former resident. Investigators, journalists, and skeptics all visited the house, capturing photographs and recordings that remain controversial to this day. Some believe Janet and her sister were simply skilled pranksters, others that something genuinely inexplicable occurred in that modest home. The case inspired books, documentaries, and films, becoming perhaps the most famous British haunting of the 20th century. What happened in Enfield still sparks debate among believers and skeptics alike. Some researchers believe poltergeist activity may be connected to adolescent psychokinetic energy rather than actual spirits. A striking pattern emerged across poltergeist cases. The disturbances almost always centered around a young person, often a girl going through the difficulties of puberty. This observation led some researchers to propose that poltergeist activity might not involve external spirits at all, but rather unconscious projections of psychic energy from troubled adolescents. The theory suggests that emotional turmoil, frustration, or repressed anger might manifest as physical disturbances in the environment. If true, this would make poltergeists a window into untapped human potential rather than evidence of haunting. The hypothesis remains controversial, neither proven nor disproven. Whether the energy comes from the living or the dead, something moves those objects. The source of the force remains the true mystery. Cryptids are creatures whose existence is suggested by folklore, but not confirmed by science, like Bigfoot or Nessie. Cryptozoology occupies a strange borderland between science and folklore, investigating creatures that official biology refuses to acknowledge. From lake monsters to forest apes, from winged humanoids to surviving dinosaurs, cryptids represent the possibility that the map of the known world is not yet complete. Believers point to new species discovered every year, to places on Earth still unexplored, to the persistence of identical reports across cultures and centuries. Skeptics note the absence of physical evidence, the unreliability of eyewitness testimony, the power of expectation to shape perception. Yet the cryptids endure in our imagination, symbols of wildness not yet tamed, of mysteries not yet solved. Perhaps we need them, these strange creatures of the threshold between the known and unknown. The Loch Ness Monster has been reported since the 6th century, when Saint Columba allegedly encountered it. According to the biography of the Irish saint, Columba encountered a fearsome beast in the River Ness that had recently killed a local man. Columba commanded the creature to retreat, and it obeyed him without hesitation. This account, written in the 7th century, predates the modern Nessie sightings by more than 1,000 years. The loch itself is remarkably deep, dark, and cold, with more water than all the lakes of England combined, certainly room enough for something large to hide. Despite decades of searches using sonar, submarines, and cameras, no conclusive evidence has emerged, yet sightings continue to be reported by witnesses. The monster has become a symbol of Scotland and a beloved tourist attraction, whether or not it truly exists. Some mysteries are valuable precisely because they remain unsolved. And from the misty waters of Scotland, we wade into the shadowed forests where other legendary creatures are said to dwell. Bigfoot sightings have been reported across North America for centuries, with indigenous tribes having their own names for the creature. Long before European settlers arrived, indigenous peoples across North America told stories of large, hairy, human-like creatures living in the forests. The Salish spoke of Sasquatch, the Lummi of Tsmequis, each tribe having its own name and traditions about these beings. Modern Bigfoot sightings began in earnest in 1958 when enormous footprints were discovered at a California logging site. Since then, thousands of sightings have been reported, along with controversial photographs and film footage. Skeptics dismiss Bigfoot as misidentification, hoax, or folklore given life by wishful thinking. Yet the forests of the Pacific Northwest remain vast and dense, and those who venture deep into them sometimes return with stories that cannot easily be explained. The wilderness keeps its secrets. The Yeti of the Himalayas has been part of Sherpa folklore long before Western explorers heard the tales. The Sherpa people who have lived in the shadow of the world's highest peaks for generations speak of the Yeti, the wild man of the snows, with a matter-of-fact acceptance that often surprises Western visitors. To them, the Yeti is neither supernatural nor impossible, simply another creature of the mountains, rarely seen but certainly present. Western interest exploded when mountaineers began reporting enormous footprints in the snow, sometimes photographed alongside ice axes for scale. Expeditions have searched for the Yeti without definitive success, though they have found unexplained tracks and heard strange howls echoing across glaciers. The remoteness and harshness of the high Himalayas make systematic searches nearly impossible. What walks those frozen heights when no one is watching remains an open question. Werewolf legends appear in nearly every European culture, with trials for lycanthropy occurring alongside witch trials. The belief that humans could transform into wolves, whether by curse, magical ointment, or diabolical pact, was taken with deadly seriousness throughout medieval and early modern Europe. Courts tried accused werewolves with the same rigor applied to witches, extracting confessions through torture and executing the convicted. Some of the accused seemed genuinely to believe they had transformed, perhaps suffering from mental illness or the effects of hallucinogenic substances. Others were likely innocent victims of superstition and social tension. The werewolf embodied deep fears about the beast within, the violence that civilization struggles to contain. Even today, when we no longer believe in literal transformation, we understand the metaphor all too well. The wolf inside us is never entirely tamed. The Beast of Gévaudan terrorized France in the 1760s, killing over 100 people and never being definitively identified. For 3 terrible years, something stalked the rural region of Gévaudan in south-central France, attacking people working in fields and traveling on roads. The attacks were fatal and frequent, claiming over 100 lives, and the creature seemed to possess almost supernatural cunning in evading hunters. The king himself sent his best hunters, and eventually a large wolf was killed and declared to be the beast, but attacks continued unabated. A second creature was killed by a local hunter, and only then did the violence stop. Debate continues about what the beast actually was, whether an unusually large wolf, a hyena escaped from a menagerie, or something stranger still. Over 100 confirmed deaths make it one of history's deadliest animal attacks. Something terrible walked those hills, and we still do not know what it was. Vampire folklore emerged across Eastern Europe, with rituals to prevent the dead from rising, including staking and decapitation. Before Dracula became a literary icon, Eastern European peasants lived in genuine fear that their dead might rise from the grave to prey upon the living. When disease swept through villages and people died in rapid succession, survivors sometimes concluded that the recently deceased were returning as revenants to drain the life from their former neighbors. Bodies were exhumed and found to be in suspicious condition, bloated and with blood around the mouth, signs we now understand as normal decomposition, but which then seemed definite proof of undeath. Stakes were driven through hearts, heads were removed, and garlic was stuffed into mouths to prevent the corpse from rising again. The fear was very real, and so were the desperate measures people took. Death itself seemed like only the beginning. Vlad the Impaler inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula, though the historical prince was cruel rather than undead. Vlad III, ruler of Wallachia in the 15th century, earned his fearsome nickname through his harsh methods of punishment, which were meant to terrify his enemies and discourage rebellion. His reputation for cruelty was legendary even in an age accustomed to violence, and his name became synonymous with fear throughout the region. When Bram Stoker began researching for his vampire novel, he encountered accounts of this brutal prince and borrowed his name and some details of Romanian geography. However, the connection between the historical Vlad and the literary vampire is largely superficial. Stoker's count is a supernatural predator, while the real Vlad was all too human in his capacity for atrocity. The name Dracula means son of the dragon, a title inherited from his father. Some monsters need no fangs to be remembered across the centuries. The chupacabra first emerged in Puerto Rican folklore in 1995, allegedly draining livestock of blood. Reports began in Canavanas, Puerto Rico, where farmers found their goats and chickens drained of blood through small puncture wounds, with no other injuries visible. Witnesses described a creature about the size of a small bear, with large eyes, spines running down its back, and a reputation for draining the blood of livestock while leaving the flesh untouched. The name chupacabra means goat sucker in Spanish, and the legend spread rapidly through Latin America and into the southern United States. Skeptics have suggested the creatures caught on camera are actually coyotes or dogs suffering from mange, which creates a hairless alien appearance. The chupacabra demonstrates how quickly modern folklore can spread in an age of mass media. Some creatures are born not in dark forests, but in newspaper headlines. And from the realms of legendary beasts, we turn to the strange phenomena that seem to defy the laws of nature. Spontaneous human combustion has been reported for centuries, with bodies found burned while surroundings remained untouched. Cases dating back centuries describe people found reduced to ash and bone while the chair they sat in, the bed they lay upon, even papers nearby remained unburned. The phenomenon defies ordinary understanding of fire, which should either spread to consume everything or die out before consuming a human body. Proposed explanations have included alcoholism making tissues more flammable, the wick effect where body fat burns slowly like a candle, or unknown chemical processes occurring within the body. None of these theories fully accounts for all reported cases. Skeptics point out that many incidents occurred near external heat sources, and the wick effect can explain the contained burns. Yet the image persists, the human body as kindling for an impossible flame. Some fires, it seems, burn from within. Charles Dickens included spontaneous combustion in Bleak House, reflecting Victorian fascination with the phenomenon. In his sprawling novel of social criticism, Dickens has a memorable character named Krook die by spontaneous combustion, his body burning while the shop around him remains largely intact. Critics at the time accused Dickens of perpetuating dangerous superstition, but he defended himself by citing documented cases and insisted he had researched the phenomenon thoroughly. The inclusion reflects the Victorian fascination with the boundaries between science and the unknown, an age when new discoveries seem to be constantly redrawing the maps of possibility. Dickens used the impossible death as a metaphor for moral corruption, suggesting that evil could consume a person from within. Literature has always found ways to make the impossible speak deeper truths. Some deaths are too symbolic to be merely natural. Ball lightning is a rare atmospheric phenomenon that science still cannot fully explain despite centuries of reports. Witnesses describe glowing spheres of light, ranging from golf ball to football size, appearing during thunderstorms and sometimes entering buildings through windows or chimneys. The luminous balls drift slowly, sometimes passing through solid objects, and either fade away silently or explode with a bang. Reports come from credible witnesses, including scientists and pilots, yet for decades the phenomenon was dismissed as hallucination or misperception. Recent research has proposed various explanations involving plasma, burning particles, or microwave radiation, but no single theory accounts for all observations. Ball lightning reminds us that even in an age of advanced physics, the atmosphere can still produce phenomena we do not fully understand. Nature keeps some of its secrets hidden in plain sight. The Bermuda Triangle gained fame in the 20th century for ships and aircraft vanishing without explanation. The region of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico became notorious for alleged disappearances that seemed to defy rational explanation. Ships vanished without distress calls, aircraft disappeared from radar without a trace, and rescue missions found no wreckage, no bodies, no answers. Writers and researchers compiled extensive lists of incidents stretching back to the 19th century, suggesting that something about this particular stretch of water was dangerous and possibly supernatural. Theories ranged from magnetic anomalies to underwater methane releases to extraterrestrial abduction. The triangle became a powerful symbol of the ocean's enduring mystery, a place where the sea could still swallow ships without explanation. Even in the modern age, some waters remain uncharted in the deepest sense. Most Bermuda Triangle incidents can be explained by natural causes, yet the mystery persists in popular imagination. When researchers examined the actual statistics, they found that the Bermuda Triangle has no more disappearances per square mile than any other heavily trafficked region of ocean. Many famous incidents turned out to have mundane explanations: storms, equipment failure, human error, or simply occurred outside the triangle entirely, but were attributed to it. The area is prone to sudden severe weather. The Gulf Stream can quickly disperse wreckage, and the deep Puerto Rico Trench makes recovery difficult. Insurance companies do not charge higher rates for ships passing through the triangle. Yet the legend persists because we want to believe in places of mystery, regions where the ordinary rules might not apply. The human imagination creates its own maps, and some territories stubbornly refuse to be demystified. Crop circles appeared in English fields beginning in the 1970s, sparking debates about their origins. Farmers would wake to find their wheat or barley fields marked by elaborate patterns of flattened stalks, circles within circles, geometric shapes of increasing complexity. The phenomenon attracted worldwide attention, with some believing the formations were messages from extraterrestrial intelligences, others that they were created by unusual weather patterns or Earth energies. In 1991, two elderly British men admitted to creating many of the circles using boards and rope, working at night to avoid detection. Yet even after this confession, new formations continued to appear, some too large and complex for simple hoaxing. The crop circle phenomenon reveals our desire for contact, for messages from beyond, for signs that we are not alone in an indifferent universe. Some patterns in the fields remain unexplained. And from the mysterious patterns in fields, we drift toward the experiences that occur within the human mind itself. Near-death experiences share common elements across cultures, including tunnels of light and meetings with deceased relatives. People who have been clinically dead and then revived often report remarkably similar experiences, regardless of their cultural or religious background. They describe leaving their body and observing medical procedures from above, moving through a dark tunnel toward an intensely bright and loving light, encountering deceased relatives or spiritual beings. Many report a life review, seeing key moments of their existence flash before them, feeling the emotional impact of their actions on others. Those who return often describe profound personality changes, a reduced fear of death, and a sense that consciousness continues beyond physical existence. Whether these experiences represent glimpses of an afterlife or the final firings of a dying brain remains hotly debated. Something happens in those moments between life and death. Researchers estimate that between 10 and 20% of cardiac arrest survivors report near-death experiences. Studies in hospitals around the world have attempted to understand what happens to consciousness when the heart stops. Researchers have interviewed thousands of survivors, cataloging their experiences and looking for patterns and verifiable details. Some patients have accurately described events that occurred while they were clinically dead, including details of their resuscitation they could not have witnessed normally. Critics argue these accounts could result from fragments of consciousness during borderline states, memories constructed after revival, or oxygen deprivation affecting the brain. The research continues, with some scientists placing hidden images in hospital rooms to test whether patients can truly perceive their surroundings during cardiac arrest. The boundary between life and death may be more permeable than we once believed. Out-of-body experiences have been reported throughout history, with some claiming to observe their own bodies from above. The sensation of floating outside one's physical form appears in accounts from ancient shamanic traditions, medieval texts, and modern hospital rooms. People describe rising above their bodies during moments of extreme stress, observing their surroundings from a perspective that should be impossible. Some report traveling great distances while their bodies remain stationary, visiting distant locations and later verifying details they could not have known. Researchers have attempted to study these experiences, with some placing hidden targets in hospital rooms to test whether patients can truly perceive their environment during cardiac arrest. The phenomenon challenges our understanding of consciousness and its relationship to the brain. Whether glimpses of a soul or tricks of a stressed mind, out-of-body experiences remain profound for those who have them. Sleep paralysis has been experienced across cultures, often accompanied by visions of shadowy figures or pressure on the chest. You wake in the night, fully conscious but completely unable to move, your body refusing every command while your mind screams for action. Often this paralysis is accompanied by a sense of presence in the room, a malevolent figure sitting on your chest or lurking in the shadows at the edge of your vision. Science explains this as a disruption in the sleep cycle, the body's natural paralysis during dream sleep persisting briefly into wakefulness while the mind produces hypnopompic hallucinations. Yet the experience feels utterly real and deeply terrifying to those who endure it. Throughout history, people have attributed these episodes to demons, spirits, or supernatural attack, and the terror is no less genuine for having a neurological explanation. The darkness that visits our bedside exists somewhere between dream and waking. The old hag phenomenon describes sleep paralysis visitors across cultures, from the mare of European folklore to the Kaneshibari of Japan. Across vastly different societies, people have reported similar experiences of nocturnal visitation by malevolent entities. In Newfoundland, the old hag sits upon sleepers' chests, while Germanic traditions blame the mare, a creature that would ride victims through night. Japanese folklore speaks of kanashibari being bound by metal, while in the Caribbean, the phenomenon is attributed to restless spirits. These cultural interpretations share the core experience of paralysis combined with perceived presence, suggesting either a universal supernatural reality or a shared neurological phenomenon interpreted through local belief systems. The consistency of reports across time and geography makes sleep paralysis one of the most compelling examples of how biology shapes folklore. Our brains conjure similar terrors in the vulnerable hours of the night. Lucid dreaming, the awareness of dreaming while asleep, has been studied by scientists and mystics alike. The moment of realization within a dream, when you suddenly understand that none of this is real, and yet you remain asleep, opens extraordinary possibilities for exploration and control. Tibetan Buddhist monks have practiced dream yoga for centuries, viewing lucid dreams as opportunities for spiritual development and preparation for the transitions of death. Modern scientists have confirmed the phenomenon exists, using eye movement signals from sleeping subjects to communicate from within their dreams. Techniques for inducing lucidity include reality testing throughout the day, keeping dream journals, and specific meditation practices before sleep. Some lucid dreamers report using this state for creative problem solving, confronting fears, or simply experiencing impossible adventures. The boundary between waking and sleeping consciousness may be more permeable than we once believed. Precognitive dreams, visions of future events during sleep, have been reported by people throughout history. People throughout recorded history have claimed to dream of events before they happened, from personal tragedies to public disasters. Ancient cultures often viewed such dreams as divine warnings, messages from gods or ancestors about dangers that could be avoided or fates that must be accepted. Skeptics point to the vast number of dreams we have each night and the human tendency to remember hits while forgetting misses, suggesting precognition is simply coincidence magnified by selective memory. Yet some accounts are difficult to dismiss so easily, with dreamers recording specific details before events occurred that they could not have predicted through normal means. Whether these represent genuine glimpses of the future, unconscious pattern recognition, or remarkable coincidence remains debated. The sleeping mind may perceive more than we consciously acknowledge. And as you rest here between waking and sleep, let these mysteries settle gently around you. In this sleepy science journey, there is no need to find answers tonight. Let curiosity become calm, let wonder become rest, and let your breath carry you deeper into peace. Abraham Lincoln reportedly dreamed of his own assassination days before it occurred. According to accounts from Lincoln's closest friends and his personal bodyguard, the president described a disturbing dream just days before his death at Ford's Theater. In the dream, he wandered through the White House following the sound of mourning, eventually finding a corpse lying in state in the East Room, surrounded by weeping mourners and soldiers. When he asked a soldier who had died, the answer came that it was the president, killed by an assassin. Whether Lincoln actually had this dream or the story grew in the telling after his death, the account has become one of history's most famous examples of apparent precognition. The assassination of such a significant figure, combined with the eerie specificity of the reported dream, has made this story endure for over a century. Some fates, it seems, cast their shadows before them. The collective unconscious, proposed by Carl Jung, suggests shared symbols and archetypes across all human minds. While Freud focused on personal unconscious memories, his colleague Jung proposed something far more expansive, a layer of the unconscious shared by all humanity. This collective unconscious contains archetypes, universal patterns and symbols that appear across cultures and throughout history in similar forms. The wise old man, the great mother, the shadow, the hero's journey, these patterns emerge in myths, dreams, and religious imagery worldwide, suggesting they are not learned but inherited. Jung believed this shared psychic inheritance connected all human beings at the deepest level, explaining why people across different cultures report similar spiritual experiences. His ideas remain controversial in mainstream psychology, but have profoundly influenced how we understand mythology, religion, and creative arts. Some patterns run deeper than culture. Jung believed supernatural experiences might emerge from this deeper layer of the psyche common to all humanity. For Jung, ghosts, UFOs, and religious visions were not necessarily external realities, but could be projections from the collective unconscious breaking through into conscious awareness. When people across different cultures and eras report similar encounters with spirits, angels, or otherworldly beings, Jung saw this as evidence of shared archetypal patterns rather than proof of supernatural entities. This framework allowed for the psychological reality of such experiences without requiring belief in their literal truth. Jung himself maintained an open mind about the ultimate nature of these phenomena, acknowledging that the unconscious might connect to something beyond the individual psyche. His approach offers a middle ground between dismissive skepticism and uncritical belief. The supernatural, in this view, is deeply real as a dimension of human experience. And from the depths of the collective mind, we journey to the ancient sites where supernatural power was believed to concentrate. Ley lines are hypothetical alignments of ancient sites that some believe channel supernatural energy across the landscape. The idea emerged in 1921 when amateur archaeologist Alfred Watkins noticed that many ancient British sites, including standing stones, churches, and hill forts, seemed to fall along straight lines across the landscape. Watkins proposed these were ancient trackways, but later enthusiasts expanded the concept to suggest the lines channel mystical earth energies that our ancestors could perceive. Critics point out that with enough sites scattered across any landscape, random alignments are statistically inevitable, and there is no scientific evidence for earth energies. Yet ley hunting remains popular among those seeking to reconnect with ancient wisdom and sacred geography. The appeal lies in the suggestion that our ancestors understood something about the land we have forgotten. Some maps reveal patterns the rational mind cannot explain. Stonehenge has inspired supernatural speculation for centuries, with theories ranging from druidic temples to alien landing sites. The massive stone circle on Salisbury Plain has puzzled visitors for millennia, its origins and purpose open to endless speculation. Medieval writers attributed it to Merlin's magic, while later theorists connected it to druids, despite the monument predating Celtic culture by thousands of years. Modern alternative historians have proposed it was built by Atlanteans or extraterrestrials possessing lost technologies. Archaeologists have determined the stones were transported remarkable distances using methods within the capabilities of Neolithic peoples working together over generations. The site aligns with solar and lunar events, suggesting astronomical significance. Whatever its original purpose, Stonehenge remains a monument to human ambition and the enduring mystery of our deep past. Some questions have outlasted the civilizations that could answer them. The Great Pyramid of Giza sits at the exact center of the Earth's landmass, a fact that fuels mystical speculation. The Great Pyramid stands at the intersection of the longest lines of latitude and longitude, a positioning that mystics argue cannot be coincidental. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest this precise placement required knowledge the Egyptians could not have possessed. Mainstream archaeology maintains the pyramid was built by skilled Egyptian workers using ramps, levers, and remarkable organizational ability, though questions remain about exact methods. The structure's alignment with cardinal directions and celestial bodies demonstrates sophisticated astronomical knowledge, even if it does not require supernatural explanation. Mystery enthusiasts have attributed healing properties to pyramid shapes and claim objects placed inside never decay. The Great Pyramid remains humanity's most enduring monument to ambition and mystery. Some structures speak across millennia. The Nazca lines in Peru are enormous geoglyphs visible only from the air, their purpose still debated by scholars. Scattered across the high desert plateau, these enormous figures include hummingbirds, monkeys, spiders, and geometric shapes, some stretching hundreds of meters across. The Nazca people created them between 2,000 and 1,500 years ago by removing the reddish pebbles to reveal the lighter ground beneath. Theories about their purpose range from astronomical calendars to ritual pathways to messages for sky gods who could appreciate their scale. The fact that the full designs are only visible from altitude has led some to propose alien contact. The images may have been created as offerings to mountain deities who controlled water in this arid region. Whatever their original purpose, the Nazca lines remain among the most striking reminders that ancient peoples achieved remarkable feats we still struggle to explain. Some art was meant for gods, not mortals. Easter Island's Moai statues were once believed to have walked to their positions, a legend that researchers now partly support. The massive stone heads of Rapa Nui have stared across the Pacific for centuries, their creation and transportation a subject of wonder. Local oral tradition describes the statues walking to their locations through spiritual power, a claim long dismissed as legend. However, recent experiments have shown the Moai could indeed have been moved in an upright position by teams rocking them from side to side with ropes, a motion that would appear remarkably like walking. This discovery suggests oral traditions may preserve genuine historical knowledge encoded in supernatural language. The statues originally wore red stone topknots and had coral and obsidian eyes that were believed to channel spiritual power called mana. The Moai represent the ancestors who watched over the island and its people. Some legends prove to be memories waiting to be understood. The Oracle of Delphi was believed to channel prophecies from Apollo, though modern science suggests volcanic gases may have induced trances. For over 1,000 years, the priestess known as the Pythia sat upon her tripod at Delphi and delivered prophecies that shaped Greek history and politics. Kings and commoners alike made the journey to consult the oracle, whose cryptic utterances were interpreted by priests and often proved accurate. The Pythia would enter a trance state before delivering her prophecies, and recent geological surveys have revealed that the temple sits above intersecting fault lines that release ethylene and other gases known to induce altered states of consciousness. This suggests the oracle's visions may have had a chemical rather than divine origin, though this does not diminish the profound influence she wielded. For the ancient Greeks, the voice of Apollo spoke through human vessels. The gods, it seems, work through geology as readily as through miracles. And from the sacred sites of antiquity, we move to the objects believed to hold supernatural power. Cursed objects appear in folklore worldwide, from the Hope Diamond to the tomb of Tutankhamun. Throughout history, certain objects have gained reputations for bringing terrible misfortune to their owners, accumulating tales of tragedy and death that seem to follow them through successive hands. The Hope Diamond, a stunning deep blue stone now housed in the Smithsonian, was said to bring ruin to everyone who possessed it, from French royalty to wealthy American heiresses. Cursed artifacts from Egyptian tombs became a popular trope after the discovery of Tutankhamun's burial chamber in 1922. Whether these curses are real, coincidence, or the result of selective storytelling, they tap into our deep sense that certain objects can absorb and transmit malevolent energy. The belief persists that some things should not be disturbed, that antiquities carry the weight of the dead. Some possessions possess their owners. The curse of Tutankhamun's tomb captured global attention when several expedition members died in the years following its opening. When Lord Carnarvon, who funded the expedition that discovered the tomb, died just months after its opening from an infected mosquito bite, newspapers seized upon the idea of an ancient curse. Further deaths among those connected to the excavation seemed to confirm supernatural retribution, though statisticians later showed the mortality rate was actually no higher than expected. The idea of a curse was partly promoted by the expedition itself to discourage tomb robbers and manage press intrusion. The supposed curse inscription, warning of swift death to those who disturb the pharaoh's rest, was never actually found in the tomb. Yet the legend persists, blending genuine mystery with sensational journalism and our persistent belief that some knowledge comes at a terrible price. The pharaoh's vengeance exists mainly in our imagination. Dybbuk boxes in Jewish folklore are said to contain malicious spirits that can attach themselves to the living. According to Jewish mystical tradition, a dybbuk is the dislocated soul of a dead person that attaches to a living host, often causing erratic behavior or speaking through the possessed individual. Wine cabinets that supposedly contain trapped dybbukim have become objects of fascination and fear, with stories circulating about misfortune befalling their owners. The most famous such box gained notoriety in the early 2000s when its owner documented a series of strange experiences and health problems associated with the object. Skeptics point out that suggestion and expectation can create experiences that seem supernatural, and that provenance for most such boxes is impossible to verify. Yet the Dybbuk box phenomenon reflects the enduring belief that spirits can be bound, and that certain objects serve as prisons for malevolent forces. Some cabinets are best left closed. Haunted dolls like Robert the Doll and Annabelle have become famous, with visitors reporting strange experiences around them. Robert the Doll has resided in a Key West museum since the 1990s, where visitors are warned to ask his permission before taking photographs. The doll reportedly belonged to a boy named Robert Jean Otto in the early 1900s, and was blamed for moving on its own and causing household disturbances. Annabelle, a Raggedy Ann doll, gained fame through the investigations of paranormal researchers Ed and Lorraine Warren, who claimed it was inhabited by an inhuman spirit. Both dolls draw thousands of visitors annually, with many reporting strange sensations or misfortunes after showing disrespect. Whether these phenomena are real, psychosomatic, or the product of effective storytelling, the power of haunted dolls over our imagination remains strong. Something about human simulacra invites belief in possession. The Crying Boy paintings were rumored to be cursed in 1980s Britain after appearing in homes destroyed by fire. The Sun tabloid reported a mysterious pattern. Homes destroyed by fire seemed disproportionately likely to contain mass-produced prints of a weeping child. Firefighters allegedly began refusing to keep the paintings in their own homes, and readers sent in thousands of copies to be burned in a public bonfire. Investigation revealed no actual statistical anomaly. The paintings were simply very common in working-class British homes of that era. The story demonstrates how easily a curse narrative can spread when it touches on primal fears and is amplified by media coverage. Once established, such beliefs become self-reinforcing as people notice confirming evidence while ignoring contradictions. The crying boy curse remains a fascinating study in the creation of modern folklore. Some curses exist only because we believe in them. And from the realm of cursed possessions, we turn to the practitioners who have claimed power over the supernatural. Witchcraft accusations led to the execution of thousands across Europe and colonial America between the 15th and 18th centuries. The great witch hunts that swept across early modern Europe resulted in an estimated 40,000 to 60,000 deaths, most of them women accused of making pacts with Satan. Accusations often arose during times of social stress, targeting the marginalized, the eccentric, or those who had made enemies. Torture produced confessions that confirmed existing beliefs about witchcraft, creating a feedback loop of fear. The witch trials represent one of history's most tragic examples of how belief in the supernatural, combined with institutional power, can destroy innocent lives. Colonial America inherited these fears, though the witch panic there was briefer and less deadly. Understanding how these accusations spread helps explain the psychology of moral panics throughout history. Fear of the supernatural has caused more harm than the supernatural itself. The Salem witch trials of 1692 resulted in 20 executions and remain a cautionary tale of mass hysteria. The Massachusetts colony erupted in fear when young girls began displaying strange behavior and accusing neighbors of witchcraft. Over the course of several months, more than 200 people were accused, with the trials proceeding on the basis of spectral evidence, testimony that the accused spirit had appeared to torment victims. The accused included people from all social strata, and the trials only ended when the governor's own wife was named. The episode has become a powerful metaphor for the dangers of false accusations, mass panic, and the abandonment of reason in times of fear. Modern analysis suggests the girls may have suffered from ergot poisoning, mass psychogenic illness, or simply discovered the power that accusations gave them. Salem reminds us how quickly communities can turn on their own members. Fear makes monsters of neighbors. Cunning folk were village healers and diviners consulted for protection against witchcraft and finding lost items. Before the witch trials demonized all folk magic, many communities relied on cunning men and wise women who operated outside the official church. These practitioners offered services that included healing ailments with herbal remedies, finding lost objects through divination, identifying thieves, and protecting against malevolent witchcraft. Their role was ambiguous, helping their communities while using the same magical techniques that could bring accusations of witchcraft against them. Cunning folk bridged the gap between the natural and supernatural, offering practical solutions to everyday problems in a world where such boundaries were fluid. They represent a tradition of folk magic that existed alongside and sometimes in tension with organized religion. The village wise woman knew secrets the church could not provide. Some knowledge survives outside cathedrals. Necromancy, the practice of communicating with the dead, has been condemned, yet secretly practiced for millennia. The desire to contact the dead appears in the earliest human records, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to Greek ritual practices that sought to summon shades from Hades. Medieval grimoires contain detailed instructions for raising spirits of the deceased to gain knowledge of hidden treasures, future events, or mysteries of the afterlife. The practice was dangerous both spiritually and legally, with necromancers risking demonic deception as well as prosecution by church and state. Yet the lure of forbidden knowledge and communion with the departed proved irresistible to some practitioners across every era. Modern spiritualism represents a more domesticated form of this ancient impulse, seeking comfort rather than power from the dead. The conversation with those who have passed continues in every age. Death, it seems, is not always the final word. The Witch of Endor summoned the spirit of Samuel for King Saul in one of the Bible's most famous supernatural passages. Forbidden from consulting prophets and desperate for guidance before a crucial battle against the Philistines, King Saul sought out a medium at Endor to summon the spirit of the prophet Samuel. Against all expectations, Samuel appeared, though his message offered no comfort, only confirmation that Saul would lose his kingdom and his life the following day. The passage has troubled theologians for millennia, some arguing the apparition was genuinely Samuel, others that it was a demonic deception. The story suggests that even those condemned for practicing necromancy might possess genuine power to breach the boundary between life and death. It remains one of the most vivid supernatural encounters in sacred scripture. Even kings sometimes seek answers from forbidden sources. The dead, when summoned, may speak truths we do not wish to hear. Voodoo developed in the Caribbean, blending African spiritual traditions with Catholic elements to communicate with the spirit world. When enslaved Africans were brought to the Caribbean, they carried their spiritual traditions with them, adapting them to survive in a hostile new environment. Over generations, these practices blended with Catholic imagery imposed by colonizers, creating hybrid religions like Vodou in Haiti and Santeria in Cuba. Practitioners work with spirits called LWA or Orishas, offering them food, drink, and devotion in exchange for guidance, healing, and protection. Western popular culture has distorted these traditions into caricatures involving zombies and evil magic, obscuring their sophisticated theology and community function. For practitioners, these religions offer direct access to spiritual power outside the structures of colonial Christianity. The spirits of Africa found new homes in new lands. Some faiths are too strong to be erased by slavery. And from the practices that bridge worlds, we move to the modern investigations that seek to understand the unexplained. Parapsychology emerged as a field of study in the late 19th century, attempting to apply scientific methods to supernatural claims. As spiritualism swept through Victorian society, some academics began wondering whether these phenomena could be studied rigorously rather than simply accepted or dismissed. Parapsychology sought to bring laboratory conditions and statistical analysis to bear on claims of telepathy, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. Researchers developed double-blind protocols and controlled experiments to eliminate cheating and wishful thinking. The field has produced intriguing results that believers find compelling and skeptics attribute to methodological flaws. Despite over a century of research, parapsychology remains on the margins of mainstream science, neither definitively proving nor disproving the phenomena it studies. The investigation continues in laboratories around the world. Whether science can capture the supernatural remains an open question. The Society for Psychical Research, founded in 1882, investigated telepathy, apparitions, and mediumship. A group of Cambridge scholars founded the Society for Psychical Research to apply rigorous investigation to supernatural claims rather than accepting them on faith or dismissing them without examination. Early members included distinguished scientists, philosophers, and politicians who believed the questions deserved serious attention. The society investigated mediums, collected accounts of apparitions, and attempted to document evidence for survival after death. While they exposed many fraudulent mediums, They also collected cases that resisted easy explanation. The SPR established a model for organized research into the paranormal that continues to this day. Their archives contain thousands of documented cases awaiting interpretation. Whether they found evidence of the supernatural or only of human credulity depends on who reads the records. The Rhine Research Center conducted decades of experiments on extrasensory perception and psychokinesis at Duke University. J.B. Rhine established the Parapsychology Laboratory at Duke University and conducted thousands of experiments testing whether subjects could perceive hidden symbols or influence falling dice through mental effort alone. His research used special cards with simple symbols, later known as Zener cards, and rigorous statistical analysis to detect effects too small to observe in individual trials. Rhine's results suggested a small but consistent effect that he attributed to psi abilities, though critics questioned his methodology. The Rhine Center continues research into anomalous cognition and healing, though it no longer operates under university auspices. Whether Rhine captured evidence of extraordinary human abilities or of subtle experimental flaws remains debated. The cards have become an icon of scientific attempts to measure the immeasurable. Electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, involves capturing unexplained voices on recording devices in allegedly haunted locations. Researchers discovered that audio recorders left running in empty buildings sometimes captured what sounded like voices speaking words or phrases not present during recording. Some voices seem to respond to questions, while others appear to be random fragments of speech or ambient noise interpreted as meaningful through pareidolia. Enthusiasts have developed elaborate protocols for EVP sessions, asking questions and leaving pauses for spirits to respond, then enhancing the recordings to bring out faint sounds. Skeptics point out that our brains are wired to perceive patterns and meaningful speech in random noise, and that radio interference can contaminate recordings. Yet for believers, EVP offers technological proof of survival after death. Some messages come through static. Whether anyone is really speaking remains unclear. Infrared cameras and electromagnetic field detectors became standard tools for ghost hunters in the late 20th century. The popularization of ghost hunting through television programs created a standard toolkit that investigators now carry to allegedly haunted locations. Infrared cameras can reveal temperature variations and capture images in complete darkness, while EMF detectors measure electromagnetic fields that some believe are disturbed by spiritual presence. Other devices include motion sensors, spirit boxes that scan radio frequencies, and thermal imaging cameras. Whether these instruments actually detect ghosts or simply give scientific appearance to a non-scientific pursuit is debated. The equipment lends an air of objectivity to what remains a fundamentally subjective experience. Ghost hunting has become a hobby for thousands who seek evidence of the supernatural with the tools of technology. Some mysteries resist even modern instruments. And as these modern investigations settle into the quiet, let your own awareness grow soft. You have journeyed through centuries of mystery in this documentary for sleep. Now, let the weight of wonder become the weight of rest. Breathe slowly and let yourself drift. The stone tape theory suggests that buildings can record emotional events and replay them as ghostly apparitions. This hypothesis proposes that intense emotional events might somehow become imprinted on the physical fabric of buildings, particularly in stone structures, and replay under certain conditions like recordings. The theory gained popularity after a 1972 BBC television play and offers a framework for residual hauntings, where apparitions repeat the same actions endlessly. It draws loosely on ideas about crystal structures storing data, though no mechanism for such recording has been demonstrated. For believers, the stone tape theory explains why some ghosts appear oblivious to observers and why hauntings often seem tied to specific locations. Skeptics note it remains purely speculative with no supporting evidence, yet it represents the human desire to find natural explanations for supernatural experiences. Some walls, perhaps, remember what they have witnessed. Quantum physics has led some to speculate about consciousness persisting beyond death, though this remains highly controversial. The strange behavior of particles at the quantum level, including entanglement and superposition, has led some theorists to wonder whether consciousness might be a quantum phenomenon that could survive physical death. Proponents argue that if consciousness arises from quantum processes in the brain, it might not be bound by the same rules as ordinary matter. Critics point out this involves misunderstanding of quantum mechanics and wishful thinking about its implications for the mind. Mainstream physics does not support the idea of consciousness persisting without a physical substrate, yet the genuine mysteries of quantum mechanics leave room for speculation about the nature of reality itself. The questions are real even if the answers remain elusive. Science has not explained consciousness, though it may one day. Until then, wonder remains. The placebo effect demonstrates how belief alone can produce physical changes, hinting at the power of the mind over matter. Medical research has documented that sugar pills can produce genuine healing when patients believe they are receiving real medicine. The effect is not imaginary. Brain scans show that belief alone can trigger the release of endorphins and activate reward pathways, producing measurable changes in the body. The placebo effect suggests a deep connection between mind and matter that science is only beginning to understand. For some, this hints at the reality behind faith healing, miracle cures, and the power of positive thinking. Others see it as evidence that the brain has untapped healing capacities that do not require supernatural explanation. Either way, the placebo effect demonstrates that belief itself is a powerful force. What we expect to happen sometimes shapes what actually occurs. The mind moves matter in ways we have yet to fully comprehend. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences without causal connection, was proposed by Jung as evidence of deeper patterns in reality. Jung observed that sometimes events seem connected in meaningful ways that cannot be explained by cause and effect. A person thinks of a friend they have not seen in years, and that friend calls moments later. A dream contains imagery that appears in real life the following day. Jung proposed that these synchronicities reveal an underlying order to reality that connects mind and matter in ways conventional science does not recognize. Skeptics explain synchronicity through statistics and selective memory. We notice the hits and forget the misses. Yet many people report experiences that feel too meaningful to be mere coincidence. Whether synchronicity reveals something profound about reality or about how human minds seek patterns remains an open question. Some connections feel too right to be random. The universe, perhaps, speaks in coincidences. And from the edges of science and mystery, we arrive at the questions that remain unanswered still. Despite centuries of investigation, no supernatural phenomenon has ever been proven under controlled scientific conditions. Every claimed psychic has failed tests under rigorous conditions. Every haunting has alternative explanations. Every miracle evaporates under scientific scrutiny. The James Randi Educational Foundation offered a $1 million prize for decades to anyone who could demonstrate supernatural abilities under controlled conditions, and no one ever claimed it. This consistent failure leads many scientists to conclude the supernatural simply does not exist, that all such experiences can be explained by natural causes we may not yet fully understand. Believers counter that science cannot measure what lies outside its paradigm. The debate continues, but the evidence remains stubbornly absent. Perhaps some things cannot be captured in laboratories, or perhaps the supernatural exists only in human minds and stories. Yet the persistence of supernatural beliefs across all cultures suggests they serve deep psychological or social functions. Every human society ever studied has developed beliefs in spirits, gods, and powers beyond the visible world. This universality suggests that supernatural belief is not a cultural accident, but serves some essential function in human psychology or social organization. Perhaps such beliefs help bind communities together, provide comfort in the face of death, or offer explanations for events beyond human control. Evolutionary psychologists propose that the tendency to detect agents and intentions, even where none exist, was adaptive for our ancestors. The rustling in the bushes might be a predator, and it cost less to be wrong about a false positive than to miss a real threat. We may be wired to believe in invisible presences. The supernatural might be hardwired into human nature. Some beliefs are older than civilization itself. The fear of death may be the root of all supernatural belief, as humans seek comfort in the possibility of continued existence. Humans appear to be the only animals fully aware of their own mortality, and this knowledge creates an existential anxiety that supernatural beliefs may help alleviate. If something of us survives death, whether as a soul, a spirit, or a ghostly remnant, then death is not the absolute end that terrifies us. Ancestor veneration, beliefs in the afterlife, and ghost stories all suggest continuity beyond the grave. Terror management theory in psychology proposes that much of human culture exists to buffer us against the awareness of death. From this perspective, the supernatural is not about spirits at all, but about the living and their need to imagine death as something other than extinction. We tell ghost stories to comfort ourselves. Some fears are too great to face without hope of continuation. Stories of the supernatural help us process grief, providing narratives where death is not the end. When someone we love dies, the finality can be unbearable. Supernatural narratives offer alternatives where the relationship might continue beyond the grave. The departed might still watch over us, visit us in dreams, or communicate through signs. Ghost stories can be comforting rather than frightening, suggesting the dead have not truly gone. Grief counselors note that many bereaved people report sensing the presence of the deceased, and these experiences bring comfort rather than distress. Whether these are genuine visitations or the mind's way of processing loss, they serve an important psychological function. The supernatural provides a language for speaking about death that softens its sharp edges. We need stories where goodbye is not forever. Some hauntings are acts of love. The dead, perhaps, never truly leave those who remember them. Whether ghosts exist or not, the human need to believe in something beyond the visible world appears universal and enduring. Even in an age of scientific materialism, supernatural beliefs persist and in some ways are increasing. Ghost hunting shows attract millions of viewers, belief in angels remains widespread, and alternative spirituality flourishes. The persistence of these beliefs, despite scientific skepticism, suggests they meet needs that pure materialism cannot satisfy. Humans seem to require enchantment, a sense that the world contains more than physics can measure. Perhaps this is a flaw in human cognition, or perhaps it is wisdom that science has not yet validated. The supernatural represents the human intuition that reality is deeper and stranger than it appears. We are meaning-seeking creatures in what may be a meaningful universe. the need to believe in something more appears as fundamental as the need for food or shelter. Perhaps the greatest supernatural mystery is consciousness itself, the inner experience that science still cannot fully explain. We know more about distant galaxies than we do about the experience of being aware. Despite centuries of investigation, no one can explain how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience, why there is something it feels like to be you. This is the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains unsolved. Some philosophers argue consciousness must be a fundamental feature of reality, as basic as matter and energy. Others believe it will eventually yield to neuroscience. Either way, the existence of consciousness reminds us that profound mysteries remain at the heart of our most familiar experiences. Perhaps the supernatural begins not out there, but in here. The greatest mystery may be the one looking out through your eyes, gently closing now, drifting peacefully towards sleep. And so our journey through the supernatural gently fades into the stillness of the night. In this History Sleep documentary, we have wandered through the ghost stories of ancient Mesopotamia, stood at crossroads where spirits were said to gather, and watched as Victorian parlors filled with whispers from beyond. We have explored the legends of cryptids and curses, the experiences that blur the line between dream and waking, and the persistent human need to believe in something unseen. These facts to fall asleep, to have carried you through the shadows where mystery still dwells. If these quiet explorations have brought you peace, consider subscribing to join our community of curious sleepers. There are more wonders waiting in the space between what we know and what we imagine. Share this sleep history journey with someone who might also find comfort in these gentle mysteries. Right now, as you rest, the supernatural continues its quiet presence in the world. Somewhere, someone is telling a ghost story by firelight. Somewhere, an old house creaks in ways that cannot quite be explained. These mysteries have accompanied humanity since the first fires were lit, and they will continue long after tonight. You are part of this ancient tradition of wonder, peacefully resting among the questions that have no easy answers. If your eyes feel heavy, let them close. Let the rhythm of your breath become steady, like the slow turning of pages in a very old book. Feel your shoulders release, your jaw soften, your hands grow still. There is nothing to solve tonight, nothing to prove. Only the gentle permission to let go, to let the mysteries remain mysteries, and to find peace in not knowing everything. Tonight, as you sleep, the unexplained continues its quiet work. Ancient sites stand beneath the stars as they have for millennia. Legends pass from one generation to the next in whispered bedtime stories. The boundary between the known and unknown remains as thin as it has always been. You are a small, warm presence within this vast world of wonder, peacefully resting among the mysteries that make being human so endlessly fascinating. Sleep well, sweet dreams. And may you carry with you the quiet knowledge that the universe holds more than we can ever fully understand, and that this is not a burden, but a gift. This has been Drowsy Discovery. Good night.